Support podcast. Today's podcast will be reflecting on the last 2 years of living in a pandemic and is presented to you by Rachel, that's me, hello, and Tim,
that's me, hello,
who are peer support workers who work within the Wellbeing Service. Today's podcast will cover what are peer support workers, reflections on the past 2 years, and sharing peer support workers' stories and reflections. We hope that you come away from today's podcast with an understanding of the different ways the last 2 years have affected people and the strategies they have used to support themselves through this unprecedented time. So just to introduce peer support work to you, if you're not familiar with it, peer support workers all have their own experience of living with mental health challenges, and we share our experience of this with others along with our recovery stories to offer hope. We use our experience of recovery to help people to make sense of what they are going through and to explore what may support them in their own recovery. Like I said, we're going to be reflecting on the last 2 years of the pandemic. And Tim, I don't know about you, it's a pretty big topic, I think. I'm thinking about this.
Such a big question, isn't it? Like, so much has happened in so many different ways. So I was thinking, how do we fit this into 20, 30 minutes?
I'm not sure. We might have to do some serious editing, Tim, probably. But I mean, especially if you think, when we're recording this today, restrictions have come back into place, lots of different things are happening, and I had sort of at lunchtime, increases in infections and things like that. And it's kind of like, wow, we're still here. Did we really think that this time last year we'd be back in this place that we're currently in? I don't know. It's like we said, it's quite unprecedented, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I find myself in a really strange place, or a dichotomy even, between uncertainty and certainty. Like, lockdown came with a lot of certainties. Today would be the same as yesterday. Tomorrow will be the same as today. But also the uncertainty of like what's going to change next. Like even the last couple of days, lateral flow tests have been becoming difficult to get a hold of, and that adds another level of uncertainty. But also the monotony of lockdown. So that I've always found for myself there was a lot of conflict in mental health, and that just happened to be another one.
And like you say, it's that uncertainty versus certainty. I don't know about you, but with my own anxiety, I find uncertainty and ambiguity very, very challenging. And I've had to do sort of a lot of work to learn to tolerate it, because in Rachel's world, everything would be under my control. It would be certain. It would be predictable. There would be nothing that just pops up. And I've had to learn that actually the world doesn't work like that. The world is actually full of uncertainty and ambiguity, and had to sort of increase my tolerance for it. So for me personally, when each time we were locked down, I don't know if my experience is very unusual. I know it's not all that common, but I was okay. My anxiety went on a nice holiday. It disappeared. Because it was like, okay, you're telling me that I shouldn't go out, or I should go out limited amounts of times. You're telling me not to do all of those things that provoke my anxiety, like driving my car or going new places or doing different things. So actually it was like, okay, this is all right. And like I say, I know that's not the experience of everyone. I know people have had very opposite experiences of, the lockdown really heightening their anxiety in the way that they were feeling. But like you say, you had that certainty of, no, this is what you're doing. This is what you've got to do. You're being told to do this. Do it. And then what's happening for me now is, because things were opened up, that are probably closing up now. We're not sure. But because it was like, no, you can go out and do this, and you can do that, and do this and do that. Actually, my experience now is that my anxiety is hitting me really, really very hard. And, I'm finding that I'm being triggered a lot more than I was previously, because obviously, my anxiety hasn't had to deal with any of these things. So I think, like you say, for me, it's this period where we've got uncertainty, like you say, things, tests not being available as we're recording, or different sort of changes. What will be the change tomorrow? Who knows? That's what I'm sort of finding sort of difficult in this moment.
I totally get that, and I felt the same as you when lockdown started, because it almost felt familiar to me, because I've been in a place before where I wasn't leaving the house and I was very much inside in my own little Tim version of lockdown. And do you know what? When it made me worry, because I was like, how long can I do this for before the old habits I used to have creep in, like those older coping mechanisms come in? How long is this sustainable for? And as opposed to it being a choice to stay in and not go out and avoid, it became something that was enforced on me, to stay in and not go out and avoid. And I think it became a case of, how do I frame this in my mind? And for me, it was thinking about, I've been here before, and I know what works and I know what doesn't work. A big challenge for me was that being supported by the people around me has always been integral to my recovery. So I remember on the first week of lockdown, one of the things I do on a Sunday is I take my niece to the shops, and she spends far more money than we agree, but she's a hard negotiator. And I remember turning up to my brother's house to collect her, and my sister-in-law looked out the window and she was like, "Tim, it's lockdown, you can't." And just this overwhelming, the reality of it, the overwhelming sadness that I'm actually alone again. And so I sort of wandered home, and it made me reflect that I know how to handle this. Like, I've been here before, I know what things I have to do, but I'm going to have to figure out some new things, because I can't do all the things I used to.
Yeah, and like you said, for those of us who lived on our own, or live on our own rather, at the first kind of lockdowns, there was no such thing as support bubbles, were there? So there's me, I live on my own quite happily, to be honest with you. It suits me. Didn't think it would. It does. And then it's like, okay, so something's broken in the house. So I'd normally get my dad to come around and fix it. Can't do that. Can't do this. And yeah, like you say, you're like, well, I manage this every single day because this is how my life is, because I live on my own. But now I can't do those things or see those people that I would normally see and not think about. It was kind of like, oh, okay, how do we do this differently? So, we had a joy of a family WhatsApp video call once a Sunday, which was really nice, but technology doesn't always go how you want, and people all talk at once, don't they? And it was like, but actually that was really nice. Or when you could get a takeaway, I arranged it with my mum and dad to Dad would get the takeaway. He'd hang it on my door, because we live sort of quite close, and then we'd eat it over Skype, which was again really odd, but actually really nice at the same time. And yeah, like you say, I think for those of us who live on our own, it was like, ooh, okay, this is quite challenging. And obviously, since then, support bubbles happened and all of that, which did make that kind of easier. But I think you said something about not going back to old behaviours and old sort of coping strategies. And that's really interesting, because that's where I find myself now. So my anxiety is flaring quite a bit. And, previously my way to deal with anxiety was avoidance. So don't like it, don't do it. And, okay, I can't admit, oh no, I'm not doing that, because I actually am. But it's like you've got that knowledge of, do you know when you did this before, what the outcome was? Yeah. And you've done this before, and actually let's sit and think about this, So I've got to get petrol for my car at some point, because it's literally had a tank of petrol that's lasted a year. And I need to go and sort it. I know, my car really has gone nowhere. But it's like that, oh, I won't do it now because of this, I won't do it now because of that. And I know that that's not helpful, and I know I just need to go, right, car, money, go to garage, fill up car, lovely, and sort it out. But yeah, we do kind of learn about having to sort of dig deep into our own resilience and resources, and I know for myself, it was difficult, but like you said, I've been here before. I got through this before. All right, it's very different circumstances, but I know that I can do it, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And again, it resonates with me in a big way, because I find my standards for other people are different to the standards I have for myself. So I always see other people as stronger than they think they are, and it was a nice reflection to try and turn that on myself and kind of relearn that self-compassion that had maybe become automatic, and thinking again, actually, I know I can do this. This isn't back to square one. It's just a different square entirely.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it was kind of relearning that self-compassion, and actually I'm grateful for it, because it's something that I've been more mindful of. Not be so critical, not be so judgmental of myself, and I get it wrong. It's okay not to be okay, and you don't have to get it right all the time. I think it was, so I totally get where you're coming from.
And like you say, it's kind of, we've had that experience, all right, in a very different kind of manner, but actually I can get through this, and there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be days that are really unpleasant and days that are all right. And it's riding that wave, isn't it? In terms of, there are things that we can control, things that are completely out of our control,
right.
But we can do it. I mean, I'm gently, I feel like a little tortoise coming out of her shell or something like that at the minute. So I'm very gently kind of doing stuff that, during lockdowns we were told not to. So online shopping, I really got into that. But now, instead of getting a birthday card off the internet, I'm going into an actual physical shop. So I'm walking into town, which is good because it's giving me, exercise, which has gone out the window. So that's nice. That there is the anxiety of, I don't want to do this. No, let's not. And the rest of me is going, do you know what? It's all right. You can do this, and it's actually made me more decisive when it comes to getting stuff, because I can be the person sitting there with several different cards going, I should get that one or that one. Now it is literally, I'm a woman on a mission. Go in,
awesome. Here
it is, find it, get it, buy it, go. And each time I do it, I have such a level of I guess pride, really, that I've done it. I could have avoided it. No, I did it. And I've got it. And I wear glasses, so a mask, cold weather, going into a warm shop. It's never much fun because you steam up and you can't see where you're going and things like that. But I know that I need to do that. So I know that I need to keep doing that, to keep challenging it. But like you said about self-care and self-compassion, for me, it's doing it gently.
Yeah.
So not going, I'm going to sit in a pub with lots of people. No, I'm going to do this at a pace that suits me, but also understanding that sometimes I do need to really challenge myself. So, yeah, it can be like a fine line that we kind of walk, really. And I think, I don't know about you, Tim, but it was also appreciating the small things in life.
Absolutely, yeah, and it really became a question of small things, and not necessarily just the physical things, but the way we feel as well. Like, I think that being proud of yourself for not avoiding something, if you're going to quantify it, I think it's really important to appreciate those things. And I don't often want to quantify them, because I don't find a value in saying this was a big thing, this was a small thing. It can just be a thing. But I know exactly what you mean. If I didn't avoid a thing, or if I did a thing, I guess, to frame it that way, I'd appreciate that. And that was one of the small things that I could appreciate. And I say small in quote marks. It probably felt quite big at the time. But also, you're right, the small things in seeing my niece walk past and being able to wave to her, that's something I could appreciate. Or kind of being thrown a roll of toilet paper out the window. It's a small thing, but it would have meant a lot at the time. And
or things like, for me, when we were told to, you could go out for one bit of exercise a day to start with. So I did do that to start with. I must admit, it gave me a whole load of challenges that I didn't like. But actually, when you're going out, so like me venturing into town a lot more, it's like, that shop wasn't there when I last came down. 2 years ago, kind of noticing different changes, or how some shop fronts had, repainted and, did stuff like that. But it was also, for me, the changing of the seasons. So, going out on that walk and going, oh, look, that's grown, or the silence of cars not being out.
Yes.
Oh, and again, for me, it's like a double-edged kind of thing. There was me thinking, oh, that is fantastic. That silence is just amazing, because you can hear all the birds, that make all their noises a lot sort of clearer. But then it was also, oh, that's a slight worry, because, we're not out because we can't be out, and things like that. So focusing on actually the appreciation of those things kind of helped me to deal with the concern of them as well, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. And it's actually one of the things I use to break up the monotony. So between uncertainty and monotony, like just being mindful and noticing the world around me on my daily walk that we could go on. Mm-hmm. That's something that could kind of take away the edge of that Groundhog Day feeling.
Yeah.
And I think you're so right. I can remember like looking out my window and just watching the leaves on the trees fall away and things, and like it made the year feel like it was going by so quickly. But yeah, no, it's the small things. I think it always was in my recovery, the small things.
Yeah, and I think, when we have to make big changes for whatever reason, it does help us to appreciate, those different things. Like, the quiet helped me really to appreciate the fact that I'm really quite introverted, and I kind of felt that I've now finally embraced that side of me. And it was like, actually, no, I do like quiet. I do like things that are perhaps done on my own, not that I don't like people as such. It's like I need that restorative time by myself. And all right, there could be an element of the lockdowns gave me far too much of that, so perhaps I've gone a little bit the other way, I'm not sure. But just for me, it was the radio. There was nothing to watch that was worthwhile on the telly. It was all doom and gloom. So I had the radio on, sort of listening to Radio 2 in the evenings. I completed the knitting of a scarf that I'd started, I don't know how long ago. And it was just like, I'm just taking this time to be. And when did I last do that? Sort of different, just taking that time. So yeah, and I think, I don't know, but what about for you, Tim? How did working from home and working virtually sort of affect how you felt?
Well, this was a whole thing in itself, because I started working with Wellbeing, or for Wellbeing, in just towards the tail end of last year, I think it is. It all kind of blurs together now. It was the strangest experience having my interview over Teams, and like they said, I'll do a presentation, and I was like, is the whiteboard behind me? I don't know what. So kind of like doing a PowerPoint presentation, which I didn't do in the end. I did a Word presentation, which must have worked because I'm doing a podcast today. And yeah, that was a really strange experience. I'd never worked from home before, and there was definitely room for me to blur that line between work and home. And there were some things that I kind of had to put in place there to make sure that I wasn't getting too into work. Not to sound too cliche, but I genuinely love my job. I love everything about it, and given a chance, I'll do too much of it. So it became a case of kind of monitoring that, and little things like quantifying them, but little things like putting my laptop away at the end of the day. And one of my supervisors gave me a tip of saying, I finished work at the end of the day, close my laptop and say I finished work. And it was something that gave me the break between that.
Yeah, and like you say, there'll be people listening to this podcast sort of going, yeah, I started my job for lockdown, I've never met my team in person. I've seen their faces, and it's all these different things, people who've perhaps become parents over lockdown, and how different an experience that must have been as well. And Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I obviously have done this job prior to lockdown, and worked in sort of very different ways to you have. And again, it's those, there's two different ways of looking at it, isn't it? Those adjustments that we have to make in that, I was used to working in the community, and I actually went on annual leave just as lockdown and everything was kicking off. So I kind of had my annual leave, and I'm like, I'm really not sure what the world's going to look like when I open my laptop and find out, how those things are. And I think, again, there's different experiences, isn't there? I mean, working from home and working virtually, I really enjoyed it, and we still really, really enjoy it. But there'll be people listening who are like, oh my word, no, that was my worst nightmare, coming together and all of that. And again, it's how we then learnt to go with it. Like you say, it's very, very easy when we work from home for the work-life balance to disappear completely, because it's like, I'll just do this and I'll just do this, and there's no sort of external pressure in terms of, well, I need to get in my car and drive home and it's dark and I want to go home. There isn't that kind of feeling to push that. And like you say, it's having to be very boundaried and very, no, it's for me it's 4 o'clock, I finished work, that's it, boof, gone. Put it away. And it's definitely a learning curve as well. But I think people have also said to us within the team, working from home helped them to appreciate their home. I mean, there's nothing like being in it permanently to make you kind of notice the different things, or how you use it and sort of different things like that. And it's perhaps one of those things where we think, oh, okay, actually that's an interesting way to work. I hadn't thought about doing it like that before. And I know one of our colleagues was sharing with us in terms of online stuff. They were saying they actually were able to go to an event online which they'd have been too anxious to attend in person, and they would have never experienced. And I think that's interesting too, isn't it? Well,
I totally agree. And I actually remember, I think I was there when we talked about it, and it sounded so much fun. And if you listen, and I still owe you the CD which goes along with that. And it was really, you could hear how excited they were talking about it, and I could totally relate to that. It's one of my things in lockdown that kept me going, and I love talking about it because I absolutely love it. But Animal Crossing on the Nintendo Switch, a bunch of friends and I got together and made a Discord server. And it actually got pretty big, and it became a thing that every weekend people get together, and it was something to look forward to. And I'd always valued online relationships, but I feel like lockdown has illuminated how valid they can be and how meaningful they can be when you're not necessarily sitting in front of that person. And some of my best friends today, I've never actually met. They're just people that I know because I've been to their island or we've chatted on Discord, but we speak every day now. And I think that's something that I'm actually grateful for out of lockdown, is that some of the best friends I've ever had, I've made in lockdown, but not necessarily met them.
And I've just remembered, and I can't believe, Tim, that I've forgotten this experience, but I obviously had. I actually went to a festival online in lockdown.
Okay.
I've never gone to a festival before, and it was Festival, so it's like a family orientated one, and they basically were suggesting that you made a campsite in your living room, and you camped it out, and in the morning, I think there was morning meditation or something like that. So, in my early 40s, I made a tent in my living room. It was
amazing,
unbelievable fun. It collapsed on me in the middle of the night because I used a part of my Hoover to hold it up, but I didn't care because I was doing this camping thing. And then I did an online dance class, I think it was, I went to after that. And you can't, when you're like in your living room, you're like, I can't really believe this is what I'm actually doing. But oh goodness me, it was It was fun, and
Yeah.
it's probably the only way you'll get me going to a festival is doing it online. But like you said, it's kind of, we had to think differently. We had to do things differently, and actually being able to carry those on, in a world that looks very different to how it looked this time last year, is really nice as well. And sort of embracing those different ways to do it, I mean, oh, and I also watched, what was that? I think it was A Streetcar Named Desire online. So it was a National Theatre thing, and they'd recorded it previously and they were launching it online to watch. So, actually got to watch that with some really brilliant actresses and actors in it. And again, it was like, well, is this something that I would have done previously? No,
Yeah. No,
probably not.
that's such a good example though. Can I say the band's name? Are we allowed to say band's name on here?
Well, I don't know, but let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. If we get a letter, we'll edit it out. But one of my favorite bands of all time, Enter Shikari, they had loads of dates booked over last year, and they couldn't do any of them because of lockdown. So what they did was they, instead of having the physical gigs, they did them all online. And the way that the music changed was, it was like a different band. It was still the same band, but the way that it changed and the way they adapted to it, it made me think about one of my core philosophies in recovery, which is thinking about what I can do and not what I can't do. And I love the idea that this band, they looked at all these tour dates just disappearing, and they said, what can we do? And they've actually got, I know there's actually an album that they released of all the songs that they played during lockdown. So I think they did one once a week. And I think that's something I always remember, just how I could relate to that. Like they made it work for them somehow. And actually it's some of the best music they ever released, all playing their instruments from home. So they were working from home as well.
Yeah. And I think it's also helped us, to get our creative brains going. We had to find alternatives. We could just, like you say, we could focus on the can't. Oh, I can't do this, so therefore, oh dear. Or we can actually go, right, I can't do that, what can I do instead?
Yeah.
What's different? I just thought it was amazing, that they did this festival completely online,
Exactly.
and like I say, would I have made a tent in my living room in my early 40s without that? Probably not. No, I don't think it's something I would have done. But, it's an experience that makes me smile, because it's like we had to find alternatives, and it showed our resilience. Things literally changed overnight. I remember watching the government announcement, and then lots of messages coming on my phone, and it's like, oh, okay, this is strange. This is something that we have never ever been through. We've never experienced. We've pretty much been able to get through life how we want to, within reason. And yeah, it changed overnight, and we had to just go with it, didn't we? Really. And I think, like you talked about, what's important in your own recovery, but particularly for me, it's acceptance.
Yeah.
In terms of mindfulness, and it's like, I can't change this. The more I strive against it, the worse I'm going to feel. So I'm going to accept that this is how this is at this moment in time, and look at what I do next. What's the next thing? What's the thing that's going to help me put one foot in front of the other, and sort of focus on that.
No, I totally get that as well. That was God, that was such a strange couple of weeks at the start. And I think one of the things I noticed was, it seemed like such a unifying experience. Did you notice that? In the way that they feel like people came together, even just the building that I live in, people were writing lists on the board of things that they needed, or offering, like, if you need anything, come to us. And everyone, it felt like, yeah, unifying experience is the best way I can articulate that. It felt like it was, people were coming together to help each other. Do you remember there was like 500,000 volunteers to help out? And it's something like that. It made me feel so good for humanity as a whole, just to see people doing that.
And like, Captain Tom doing his walking, and there was the child who was camping out in their garden, and they literally did that for a year didn't they, just to raise money. And yeah, like you say, people pulling together, working together, because we're all in this. We might be experiencing it in very different ways, but it's it's all the sort of same situation. And that was really nice. And I kind of sometimes feel now, are we going in a different direction? I don't know. I don't really think it's for this podcast to perhaps, sort of deep go into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of those things that bring us together and kind of keep us going through what has been the strangest and most difficult of times, really, isn't it? It's
no, for sure.
it's kind of difficult. And yeah, I'm kind of sort of thinking, Tim, we've covered a lot there in terms of our reflections and the reflections of people within the team. And I think for me, I think it has shown all of us actually how strong we are.
Yeah.
We've got through this, and all right, we might be tired and we might be finding it difficult, and we might be sort of thinking, oh, crumbs, not again. But we can use that recovery story to kind of go, yeah, okay, we don't want to really be going through this again, but we've got through it before. What were the tools and techniques that helped me then?
Exactly.
Are there any tools and techniques that actually don't help me now that I need to tweak and change? And yeah, just trying to keep forward. And I'm kind of thinking, when we release this, Tim, will the world be looking very different? We don't know, do we? It's like we said right at the start, that level of uncertainty that we've all had to really learn to tolerate as much as we were able to. So yeah, thanks for our podcast today. Some interesting themes have been covered. So just to bring everything together, Tim and I have been reflecting on the challenges and the changes of the past 2 years. Our next podcast will be looking at one of the 5 ways to well-being, which is connect.
You can find all the links for today's podcast in the podcast notes.
If you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to refer yourself to the Wellbeing Service, it's really simple. You can self-refer to the Wellbeing Service, and you can do so via the website or over the telephone. If you're listening to this podcast currently having treatment within the Wellbeing Service and would like to have peer support, then please do speak to your therapist who can make the referral for you. So thank you so much for listening to our podcast this afternoon and for joining us again. Our next podcast will be focusing on one of the 5 ways to well-being, which is connect. So it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.
That's goodbye for me. Thank you so much for listening today. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.